Hi everyone, can you guys see my screen? Please let me know. Hi Monique, Miriam. So you can see the presentation, actually the slides, or myself. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and choose a different screen. Can you see it now? Right, fine. Sorry I'm late. Apparently I was just let know by our technical department that my call was supposed to be at 9 EST and not 10 EST as I had in my diary. So I'm glad to see you all here, still here, and I hope you've been patient. And again, sorry about that. So today, just 3/4 of the slide. Monique, can you see it now? Okay. Anyway, so today I'm going to be talking about story-based coaching, which is actually very important. And if you apply it correctly, it can be very powerful. So that's to do with how you use a story to develop yourself as a coach and in a session with a client. So what will you discover today? I'm going to be talking or explaining what is usually considered as a story, the definition of a story, how our brains construct a story, and that is very, very interesting, and you'll see how that works. What makes a story so powerful in our coaching and for our own development? How can knowing our story help us as coaches? Why we should apply building a story with our clients inside of our coaching processes. And then we're going to look at practical ways to help find your story or help your client find his or her story. So the first exercise is writing an obituary. Then we look at visualizing your success. We're going to look at the thematic apperception test, or TAT. We are also going to look at a technique that is in our coaching library called Every Picture Tells a Story. And I know that some of you have been using this very successfully as well. And lastly, I'm going to look at the use of tarot and oracle cards, which is normally not used in coaching, but it can be used very effectively in coaching as well. And then we're going to end off with a small challenge for you guys today. So, what is a story? And this definition is sort of the usual definition that everybody accepts. And I'm seeing it as a sequential, often chronological set of events that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is very important, are based on varied levels of truth or a subjective reality. And you'll see why it is so sequential and chronological in the first place. And then you'll see how we construct this subjective reality, which is not which is often not very objective at all. And if you look at the reality on the one hand and what we've constructed, there's often a big divide between the two. And I've made a note there that our minds actually like to organize things. And in the next slide, we're going to see why that is. Hi, Kelly. So you like tarot cards, do you? There's some fantastic designs, so we'll come to that later. But what I did is I actually selected 2 decks. That's supposed to be the most widely used, so I hope you're going to enjoy that. Animal spirit cards, I didn't include one of those, but they are very useful as well. And I personally, I like to use those. So how does our brains construct the story? And this is actually very interesting. And I think quite a lot of you would know sort of in principle how this works. First of all, of course, we've got the sensory input. So that's our 5 senses that get information from our environment, and we take it into various centers of our brain. But it's interesting to note that there is such a lot of information coming in that we actually constantly getting a sensory information overload. And on top of that, the senses that the stimuli that we take in, it triggers core beliefs in our minds. So that brings thoughts and emotions into the play as well. So you've got all the sensory information, you've got all the automatic thoughts and emotions, which can be on a conscious level or subconscious level, triggered by the core beliefs, which is built on all of our experiences in our lifetime. And now it's important to note that we've got a limited processing capacity. So imagine that you get all of this information in, like a computer, for instance. And what are you going to do with it? So your brain need to formulate meaning and understanding. That it's got a drive and a motivation to do that. It needs to have meaning and it needs to understand the information that it takes in. But it's got a limited processing capacity. So it takes the information in and it skews it and it filters it and it screens it and it skews it to fit in what it's experienced before and what it expects, for instance. And it fills the gaps, as I said, the confabulation, which is also a very interesting concept. So if it gets information in and it's not really what it expected, it skews it and changes it and it fills gaps until the information makes meaning and sense to our brains. So then it constructs a story that we believe about ourselves and the world. And this story is actually who we think we are, not who we really are or how the reality really looks like. And we work out why we think things are happening to us. But it's important to note here that all the information that you get in is not the same picture that you put out, that you construct at the end. So I thought about it afterward, I should have put one picture of something on the left-hand side where the sensory input, the sights and smells and touch and everything comes in, and how it actually can look at the end being completely different. Yes, Estelle, I agree with you. And this is where neuropsychology and neurology is very interesting when you look at it. And when you look at, for instance, consciousness and how that is constructed, you pull all the disciplines together, including philosophy, for instance, neuropsychology, psychology, biology, and they try and put it all together to build a science of how we construct our consciousness and how we build stories of ourselves and our lives. So, and of course, there are many things that can interfere with our processing of reality, and this happens the whole time. Stress, for instance, a very big interference factor. It could cause us to exaggerate, to have tunnel vision, because we either hyper alert or distracted, or we miss some things, or we just focus on certain aspects and negate the others. So it also skews how we put our attention on certain things. Our beliefs, we've talked a little bit about that before, but as I said, this is sort of statements that you build in your mind based on what has happened to you before, and you think what has happened before will necessarily or very likely happen to you again. So if you've been hurt in the past, let's say in your childhood, and it's happened repeatedly, and that belief has become fixed, then you start to think later in life, even if your circumstances have changed, the people in your life have changed, you think the same thing will happen again. And then we've got confirmation bias as well. So your brain expects something, it expects something to happen or expects something to be true or not true, and it looks only for those evidence, not the evidence that would tend to contradict it. Then we've got certain expectations. So we see what we want to see and what we expect to see and just overlook the other things. Of course, substances will affect our processing ability and even our sense of reality. And then our own cognitive ability and emotion regulation plays a role in that as well. So emotion regulation is basically how you appraise your emotions in terms of what you think is true and not true. So that's why I'm saying here at the bottom that ultimately no two realities are the same. And every reality is based on individual assumptions, interpretations, and abilities. So it's interesting if you think about it, that you and your client may see or talk about the same thing and have a completely different idea and interpretation of it. And if we look later on, for instance, at the Every Picture Tells a Story exercise, it's very interesting to note if you have two people looking at the same picture and giving their interpretation and what story they see behind it, it is completely different because you imprint your own beliefs and your own emotions and who you are, your own value and identity on what you see in that picture. So what makes a story so powerful? You've got to show rather than tell. So when you tell or construct a story, and authors will also tell you this, don't tell a reader what you see, show them. Show them colors, show them vivid scenes, show them things. Don't tell them this character is feeling sad. Explain how they are behaving so that the reader can sort of feel their sadness, if that makes sense. So it's important that your story's got to be vivid with sensory information, and that's what makes it real in your mind as well. So when you, for instance, imagining success, you've got to taste it and you've got to smell it and you've got to feel the success and you've got to experience how it makes you feel inside and what you're thinking at that time and what is around you and how your environment looks like. So it makes it completely real in your mind. It doesn't even feel like a story anymore, but it is starting to feel like the truth. And that is what you want to achieve with a very vivid story. It's also fantastic if you can make it inspirational and have sort of an against the odds outcome. So don't be shy to make your story far out and unbelievable and highly inspiring. It's got to evoke emotions. That's also important. So if you've got to feel what your story is telling you. It has to have a powerful transformation in there as well. Otherwise, it won't really be inspirational. It won't evoke emotions. So if there's a transformation in there, and hopefully from, struggling to not so good to absolutely powerful and excellent, then there's something to aspire to as well. And in the process, it will then, if it's got all of these things, it is guaranteed to touch many lives in the process. So as coaches, we want our own and our client stories to have the same qualities than what I've mentioned here, and to reflect our personal journeys in changing the lives of our clients and others. So how can we reveal our story? As I said, much of our story, or large parts, may be on a subconscious level, and they're hidden. It's hidden in blind spots. We don't think about it often. It's connected to feelings. It's connected to things that we've maybe suppressed or repressed. We may be aware of thoughts and feelings, but don't know the origin. And it's interesting to note sometimes how, if you look at a picture, certain feelings come up that you feel it, but you just don't know what it reminds you of. You don't know the origin of your feelings, basically why you are thinking and feeling what you are thinking and feeling. So when we interpret the situation and tell a story that it reminds us of, we often reveal our story unintentionally. So all those, you look at a picture and you see a situation and you see feelings and you see a person feeling sad and lonely, and it makes you feel the same way maybe. But you don't know what, you can't draw a conclusion back to your own life, because some of the things may be suppressed, it may be hidden in blind spots for you. So that's why it's interesting to note what comes up, and then you can start to explore that further. And by such exploration, you gain awareness, knowledge of yourself, you can live your values, and if you do this very well, you can access your subconscious. It will take some time and practice, but it happens sooner than you think. I just want to go to a specific, there we go. So to a specific slide. So I've mentioned here, and I've wondered, okay, why does our story matter? So first of all, if we have a story, it tends to become a self-fulfilled prophecy. In other words, we become what we believe in. So we have a certain story and we make it to ourselves every day, consciously, subconsciously, and subconsciously we start to make decisions based on that story. So in the end, we believe our story, we make decisions based on that story, and eventually it becomes true. But is the story that you have really what you want to have become true? So that's why I said we become what we believe in. So if you have a thoughtful story that you really want to live for yourself or for your client, then build on that and work on it becoming a self-fulfilled prophecy. Our story is also linked to our beliefs. Now, it may be limiting beliefs or it may be expansive beliefs. And in the next slide, we'll have a look at those two mindsets, the growth mindset and then the fixed mindset as well. Our story influences our relationship with others. So our story, as I said, is aligned with our values and our identity, and that's the outer surface that we express to others and that we show to others and what they react to coming back to us. So if they're aligned with our identity and with our values, our relationship will be much stronger than the reverse, of course. Our story also colors our perception of the world. So if you have a sad and negative story or a limiting story, you will tend to see the world in the same way. You will see it as a sad and lonely place. You will see it as a place where all the doors are closed, where you don't have all that many opportunities. And if you can therefore change the nature of your story, your perception of the world will change as well, and therefore your relationship with the world. Our story can also support or hinder our confidence. So if it's a story where you feel you can achieve anything, be anyone you want to, live your values, you will be much more confident and much more comfortable to live that life. It is aligned with or erodes our values. So if your story is not aligned with your values, it will be weakened considerably and you will be in a constant conflict and not be able to live that story. And as I said, it represents our identity, which is everything that we stand for. So the growth versus fixed mindset. On the fixed side, if you look at it, it's basically saying that failure is the limit of my abilities. So failure to you means it's the end of the road. You may as well give up. You're never going to get it right. You're either good at it or you're not. There's no room for improvement. You don't think there's much room for growth, for change, to be resilient, to be adaptive. You believe that your abilities are unchanging, they're fixed. There's nothing you could do about it. You've got to live with what you have, basically. I can either do it or I can't. You don't like to be challenged. It makes you not only feel uncomfortable, but you try to avoid it rather than being challenged and growing from being challenged. You believe your potential is predetermined, so it's fixed. There's nothing more for you. There's no empowering thing that you can do to increase your potential or to look for another potential, for instance. When you're frustrated, you give up. You have difficulty with feedback and criticism, and you see it as a personal attack. And you tend to stick to what you know and not venture too far out of your comfort zone. And as a result, your story becomes quite stale and unimaginative. On the other side, the growth mindset. You see failure as an opportunity to grow. And what an amazing approach to thinking this is. When you fail, you don't see it as the end. You see it as an opportunity. You see it as a chance to have a new beginning, to do something differently. You see failure as a way to gain information, which is very valuable if you want to maybe make a different decision or try and find a different path. You can learn to do anything you want. That is one of your beliefs. You believe that challenges help you grow instead of trying to avoid it. your effort and attitude determine your abilities rather than, it being fixed, and no matter how much you do and how much you try and how much you think otherwise, it won't change. You see feedback as constructive, and you take in feedback and you separate it between some things that you can do something about it, which is the constructive part, and you go and work on that, and the things that you can't actually do anything about, you just accept those and let those go. You're inspired by the success of others rather than letting it put you off or be jealous or become defensive or attacking them for having that success. And you like to try new things. You are perhaps scared and you need to work on your courage to try new things, but you also understand the value of doing this. And as a result, your story becomes vibrant and expansive, and you can basically achieve anything that you set your mind to. You guys are very, very quiet today. No questions for me at this time. Thank you, Georgiana. I was worried that I wasn't online anymore. So we've gone through this slide out of order, but I can just quickly repeat it again in the correct order that I intended to be. So I said that large parts of our story, we may not even realize that we have a story, but each of us do. And it may be on a more subconscious level, it may be in blind spots. We're aware of certain things that we think and feel, but we don't know why. And when we interpret the situation and tell our story, and that is some of the ways that we can bring this to the surface and become aware of our story that's been hidden until now, and we get to then know ourselves a bit better, and we are better able to live our values and access what we've suppressed until now. So how can knowing our story help us as coaches, you may wonder by now probably. So if we know and build upon our story, we strengthen and align our values, because it's necessary to explore your values and to work that into the thread of your story for it to be as powerful as possible. Similarly, in the process, we counter our limiting beliefs. We able to identify why our story is not maybe as exciting and successful as we would like it to be. And when we look at why, we may identify some limiting beliefs that we can look at each individually, challenge them, look at whether they're true or not, why we believe in them, and then put strategies in place to counter those beliefs. In the process, we can change our perspective, and that's one of the things that I mentioned about emotion regulation. So when you reappraise your emotions, you look at the same situation maybe that's made you sad, but by changing your perspective, it makes you feel hopeful, for instance, or more positive, to name one example. And then working on our story help us discover more about ourselves, our values, our vision, our identity, who we are and who we want to be as a person. It can help support your niche. So, for instance, if you work on your story and you find that you become quite emotive and quite driven to help someone in a certain predicament or a certain situation, you are probably looking in the direction of the niche that most suit you and that you feel the most deeply about. So then you can start building your personal brand, and that is the brand of your coaching practice as well, based on the story that you've built. And in the process, you'll also develop your vision, and you'll figure out what the legacy is that you would really like to have. So let's look at it from the other side. We've looked at why we should develop our own story. So why should we help our clients build their story? Similarly, by knowing their story, they will maximize the knowledge and acceptance of themselves, and at the same time, minimize blind spots and surprises or eliminate those. Erica. You talk about victim mentalities. Yes, that can definitely be part of the story that you've got to address. So you've got to try and move away from that story and find the powers and strengths within your site so that you can basically flip that mentality around. Instead of, for instance, feeling guilty, powerless, blaming yourself. Okay. I'll just type a quick message for you. Right, let's continue. So in the process, and you've probably found the Johari window in the coaching library, which some of you I know have used as well. And that's the area where you identify things that you know and others know about you as well, that you know but others don't know about you. So it's something that you may want to keep hidden. And then there are some things that you don't know, but others know about you, and those are your blind spots. And then there's a fourth quadrant that's about things that you don't know and others don't know about you as well. So those are things you can jointly discover. And the areas where your blind spots is where a coach can help you discover those about yourself, or you help a client discover for themselves. So in the process, they get to identify and explore their values and strengths. And that's why, as Erica has said, you can turn a victim mentality around into something much stronger, because you start to see that you've got strengths, you've got certain values, and you don't need, others don't have the power to take that away from you. And when they build their story, and this is very powerful if you actually look at an exercise like this, because they may not be so clear on their why, on their vision, what they want to achieve. But when they look at a picture and they start telling a story and they make that story their own, their why comes strongly out, because certain things make them feel much more emotional. It makes them feel much more motivation and drive. And that is actually the direction where you would find your why. So the story unlocks their motivation and accountability. Also very powerful, because when you know your values, strengths, and it's aligned with your passion, of course, you'll be motivated and accountable to achieve those things. As part of the process, the client will have a reduced level of confusion, and they will have improved clarity of who they want to become and what they want to achieve, who they want to help, where they want to be with their lives, what they want to do. And as I said, they know who they are and who they want to become through the story. So let's look at some practical ways to find your story. And I've mentioned some of these before. We're going to look at a writing exercise first. Then we're going to look at a visualization exercise, the TAT test, which is a certain type of psychological test that is quite widely used. We are going to look at Every Picture Tells a Story, which is a version that we created based on the TAT, and as we'll can you still hear me? Okay, cool. I just got a message saying I've been kicked out of out of Zoom. I don't know what's going on today. But anyway, Every Picture Tells a Story is a tool that's available in the coaching library. And it was basically based on, I had the thematic apperception test in there as first, but that's licensed, so we couldn't use that. So I actually modernized the same type of idea and transformed it into Every Picture Tells a Story. And then, as I said, we're going to have a look at 2 decks of tarot cards and 2 decks of oracle cards that I've just selected randomly. So as you may know, there are literally hundreds of these cards and decks available everywhere, like on Amazon, that you can just choose something that really speaks to you. So writing your obituary exercise, and I've done this exercise before and it's really, really hard. So if you want to try and do this, take your time, do a couple of iterations, don't just try and do it all at once. I will definitely check out those decks. I've probably had a look at those before, Debbie. So as I said, this exercise may appear to be very simple, but it's not. And it uncover what's important to you, and you can use it as a guiding principle in your life going forwards and for the decisions that you will be making. It means that you will try and live how you want to be remembered. And in the process, you'll be discovering the real you and what you want your essence to be. And you'll look at temptations, distractions, and so on that you need to discard to be able to be how you want to be remembered. And you'll also look at what would you love someone say about you. And then I made a note here at the end to make it a live script. So this is not a thing that you just write and, forget about it. You've got to make it a live script and keep it aligned with your values and brand the whole time. So you will revisit it every now and then, let's say once a year or so. So if you look at the diagram on the one side, the top part is just your name, and then you move to number 2, where you write one sentence where you just say, how did you make the world a better place? So that's basically your ultimate goal and your ultimate vision. How did you make the world a better place? And then number 3, you write also just one sentence. How will people remember you and why? Who was the real you all along? Number 5 is about the temptations and distractions that you need to say no to. So who and what and why did you say no to certain things? Who will you miss the most? So these are the people that share the same values than you, that's supportive of you, that provides you with the resources you need to make the world a better place. And then you write sort of the flesh of your obituary in using 1 or 2 paragraphs. So this is going to be basically about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 sentences or so. So it's a short and concise piece of writing that just contains the crux and the heart of who you want to be, what your legacy, what you want your legacy to be. The next exercise is visualizing your legacy or success and the benefits of visualization. Gee, no, this exercise is not available in the coaching library, but it's actually a good idea. I'll see that they put it in there as well. Seeing that we basically have everything here that we can use to just put it on paper. So visualization, I would think that many of you have used it before anyway. So you probably know what it entails and how to best do it and what the benefits are. So it teaches your brain to recognize what resources it will need. So by visualizing, it's almost like a rehearsal where you have a look at what you will need and what will be in your environment and how will you be when you achieve the success that you want. So in that sense, you know where you want to be because you're visualizing it, and you know where you are, so you know the gap that you need to fill through either getting resources, building skills, practicing some stuff, whatever it may be, changing your perception, even working on your story, whatever it may be to close that gap between where you are now and the success that you're visualizing. So it also creates an inner motivation to strive toward your goals and dreams. Thank you, Radhika. Hi, Debbie. That's great to hear. 1 hour. That's quite a lot, actually. Quite conscientious. Great stuff. So a visualization, if done well, gives an immersive reality to what success will feel like. So it's important, as we'll see later on, to have all the senses involved and what you'll be thinking, what you'll be feeling, what you're imagining around you. So it becomes almost like a movie that you're playing a role in. It promotes positive thinking, and the rehearsal of that visualization becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we've talked about this before. So whenever you build your story and you start to believe in something, your decision-making and the efforts that you put in and the resources that you're going to try looking for will all be geared in the same direction. And that's why it becomes much more likely for you to fulfill that success when you visualize it first, because you base everything you do on that idea that you have of that success. And in the process, your visualization helps build your courage your creativity, and the energy that you need to also get there as well. So Jack Nicklaus, one of the greatest golfers in the world, and I'm just going to read this quickly, what he had to say about visualization. I never hit a shot, not even in practice, without having a very sharp, in-focus picture of it in my head. It's like a color movie. First, I see where I wanted to finish. Nice and white and sitting high on the bright green grass. Then the scene quickly changes and I see the ball going there, its path, trajectory, and shape, even its behavior on landing. Then there's a sort of fade out and the next scene shows me making the kind of swing that will turn the previous images into reality. So you see how vivid this is. He imagines everything from seeing to probably hearing the wind and seeing the colors of the grass and the ball and seeing the behavior and everything around it and what happens. And in his case, he followed it sort of backwards from the success to what he'll be doing to get there, which is extremely powerful. And I thought it was a very good description to help give you an idea of how a good visualization can look like. So how to do this? First of all, use all your senses. Start with imagining what the success is that you want to achieve, and then think about how will it look like, what is the colors around you, the shapes and sizes, and what feeling do you have on your skin, for instance? What does it, do you taste anything? What do you hear? Do you hear, for instance, an audience clapping? Do you hear people saying something? What do you see? Do you see yourself on TV, for instance? Do you see your name on a billboard, for instance, if you're an entertainer? Connected to your emotions, what do you feel at that moment? What are you thinking? Then say it out loud and be proud of that success when you're imagining it. Don't limit yourself at this time. Think that you can absolutely achieve anything. And then, as I said, picture the experience. Imagine the others' reaction around you, the people that matter in your life, everybody else, an audience if there is one. Your boss, for instance, your teammates, imagine what they will be thinking and how they'll be cheering you on. Then think about whether there can be any obstacles and how you will handle those. That's a good one, yes, Debbie. If you believe, you achieve. I agree with that. So in the process, when you visualize, get as detailed as possible. Absolutely make it look like a high resolution movie if you can, with good surround sound and vivid colors and everything, that you can absolutely feel what is going on. If it will help you and you're a vision-based person, create a vision board for yourself where you can put pictures and quotes and sayings, and if you have certain things that you aspire to, put that on there, and keep it alive, keep it in a place where you can see it often, and make this visualization idea a daily habit. Even if you spend 5 minutes on it a day, or even 1 minute, visualize how it will look for you. And this is the same thing that you can help your clients do as well. So we move on to the thematic apperception test, or TAT. Now, as I said before, this is not in the coaching library. I wanted to put it in there but I then replaced it with the next one that we'll discuss for reasons of trademark and licensing. This is only, you've got to buy it and you've got to be registered as a psychologist, I think, to buy it. And it's because if you want to analyze this quantitatively, you need to get some training as well. If you use it more qualitatively, then we are going to use the every picture tells a story. Then you don't have to, for instance, analyze it. You will just coach your client through the process and have them discover their own solutions and their own interpretations. So this is widely known as the picture interpretation test, which is exactly what it is. And it involves describing ambiguous scenes. And you'll see that this is basically, it looks like charcoal drawings or sketches, very old-fashioned actually. I think this was done in the 1960s or so. So it looks a little bit outdated, as you'll see just now, which is why I chose 30 images actually in place of that. And we've tried to make it ambiguous as well, so that it actually evokes certain emotions and decisions from the person telling the story about it. So the therapist would look at, if you do it yourself, or show their patients or clients a series of these picture cards. There are 30 altogether, and they say you would normally choose 5 to 12. I think 12 are too much. I would personally go for, if you're in a coaching session, probably not more than 2 or 3, depending on how detailed the client actually comes up with a story and how it touches him, but we can talk about that a little bit later further. So what you do, and the same applies to the every picture tells a story, you ask them to tell as dramatic a story and as vivid a story as they can for each picture that you present to them. And you ask them what has led up to the event shown in the picture. What do they think is happening in the scene? What are the thoughts and feelings of the characters depicted in the picture? What do they think is the outcome of the story? And how does it make them feel? And what does it make them want to do? Jody, you can use this in a coaching session in the awareness phase. It's very good if you want to have your client become more aware of their values and what is important to them. Also, if they feel that they've got thoughts and emotions that they can't really explain for themselves, because what is great about this is if a person has certain repressed thoughts and feelings and values that they may not know about, and things that, for instance, make them feel sad or make them feel scared, they will tend to see the same thing over and over in different pictures. So there's actually a pattern that comes out when you have a person look at and interpret pictures. And you'll see a thread between those, and it may be completely different pictures and somebody else may see it completely different, but you pick up the emotions that you can then, and values that you can then explore further with the client. So they will interpret a certain situation from their own perspective and from their own experiences that make them feel a certain way, that they may not have even thought about before, but it reveals it to you, and therefore you can then explore it further with them because it's now on the surface and it's opened up. So that's basically how you would use that in a coaching session. So why we use a tool like this? It's to learn more about a person, including potential emotional conflict. So they may have, as I said, certain emotions that they can't explain, or that are in conflict with what they usually feel. It also helps them express their feelings. So a person may, it's easier to express feelings when it's about something else, when you're interpreting some other characters, than what it may be if you're talking about yourself. So it's also very powerful to look at a picture and the person doesn't even realize that they may be describing themselves, their own situation, and their own emotions, because they see it in that picture, but they talk about it much more easily. So you assess, in that way, you assess someone's thought processes, including how they interpret certain situations and certain circumstances and characters. Their biases may come out. They may see certain things in certain ways that's that's judgmental or whatever, and you'll see how coherent they think about certain things as well, how they are able to work certain things out, cause and effect, how they think logical about certain situations, from what caused it to what the effect basically is. In the process, you also get to know more about the client or the person's personality, because their personality will come out in the story that they tell about the picture. And as I said, you increase awareness and you reveal suppressed information that they may not even know themselves, or they may not want to tell you, or they may not think to tell you. And as I said, it's very interesting how it comes out, because they think about this in more of a third person type of perspective or situation. So they talk about it easier, but it's still coming from inside themselves. So here are two examples of pictures. As I said, there are 30 of these, and you can see these are quite ambiguous, if you want to put it like that. So the person will look at it and tell you what they think's going on, what has happened to put the person in that situation, what is the person thinking and feeling, what will they do next. Basically, they tell you the whole story around that picture, and they make it like into a vivid movie. So they will tell you that this woman on the left-hand side has just heard this news, for instance, and who they are and who the other people are about the news, how it made her feel, what will she do next, will she be able to handle it, how will she handle it, what will be the next thing she does. So you can really take this very far and very deeply, and of course, the deeper you take it, and the more you take it on an emotional level, the more you reveal things and information about the client as well, or yourself, if you do it for yourself. Probably quite early, yes, Debbie. Not necessarily the first session after a discovery call. Personally, I would probably build a little bit of trust first. This can get quite emotional. So I think I would personally prefer to have a session or two after the discovery call first, so that you can know a little bit more about the client first before you go this route, because as I said, it can become pretty deep. Yes, Monique, very deep, and the client will probably become very emotional as well. And they wouldn't even have expected it to be like this, because it's a picture, for goodness sake. I mean, well, you wouldn't expect when you talk about a picture and when you start talking about it that you'll become emotional, but you do. And the other reason why I would do it after one or two sessions is, as I said, there's 30 pictures here. So what I would suggest one does is have a client select a picture first to talk about, and then you select one for them that you think is relevant to the topic that they may be struggling with, something that may talk to them, that they may relate to them. And note that if they feel very emotional about a picture, they're probably going to avoid picking it. So that's why it helps to know a client a little bit better before you do this, because you can have enough information and initiative to be able to probably pick a good picture that will draw information from them. Yeah, these are there are even ones that are more Hitchcockian. So as I said, they rather old-fashioned and they are trademarked. So we couldn't use them, which is probably best. I'll show you some others right now, two others that we actually chose from. It's photographs instead of sketches. Yes, Debbie, and that's a very good point that you make, to say that you create your own Oracle card. You can, the pictures that we selected are available online for free. It's on a site called pixabay.com. I'll just type it in the comments, pixabay.com. It's got free photographs that you can download. So, and it's got a search function as well. So you can select the ones that you think speak to you or will speak to a client. You don't have to use the ones that we have in the coaching library. We've just selected 30 that I thought was, covered a broad range of emotions and situations and conflicts in a way as well, and emotions as well, ranging from, as you'll see in the next slide, from very positive to negative. So this is in the coaching library. Every picture tells a story. So these are two of the pictures that are in there. Chi, if you go up to comments, it should be there. Have a look again, please, and let me know. But it's called Pixabay, Pixabay.com. Pixabay.com. Well, they can, Lucy, they can formulate a dramatic story around the laughter. They can use their imagination, and it doesn't have to be a negative dramatic story, by the way. It can just be, for instance, what comes to mind given our current circumstances is about the lockdown, and this person has been lonely for 3 months and been in lockdown, and she couldn't see anybody, and she was very down and depressed, and now the lockdown is lifted and she can get visitors again, and you see where I'm going with this. So you can even make a little bit of a dramatic and emotive story with something positive than this. It doesn't have to be just negative. Now, some of the pictures are very neutral in terms of emotion, so you can interpret it both positively and negatively. It can make you feel good, it can make you feel sad, anything in between. Then there are pictures like the one on the right-hand side, which probably, I don't know if it's just me, but it looks to be more negative than positive, most probably. Yeah, and you see, Debbie, then I'd ask you what the surprise is and why do you think it means so much to her, And that way I can learn a lot about your thinking in the process, because you'll obviously answer from your own perspective of what would make, I can probably interpret the fact if you build a story that it would apply to you too. So, Marina, you would like to go to Hawaii for a honeymoon. You could probably use it in a group session as well. I'm just thinking, you know, it would be very interesting to use it in a kind of a way like a fishbowl in a group session. So you would have one person saying what happened before, and you would have the other person say, so what do you think she's feeling now? And it actually would help build a great group cohesion. So it would probably be a very good team building exercise, to be honest. And I've seen this in practice as well in some of the coaching sessions, and it is very, very effective. And astonishing how it brings things out that surprises the client. And it's something that would probably surprise you as well, to find that, because it's almost like hypnosis in a sense, but of course you don't go that deep. But it brings stuff to the surface that's been hidden. Right. Tarot cards. The first deck that I've used is the Rider-Waite. Now, this is kind of more a traditional tarot card design. The guys of you who use this and know this more than me would probably be better able to say. But in the same way, and different from doing a reading, of course, you're not going to, yes, I know that, Estelle, I've seen that in the notes that they've made. Very interesting. So you won't do a reading like you do where you tell your interpretation to a client. You'll actually ask them for their interpretation. So you can do the same type of layout where you have the past and the future and the current situation or whatever, or you can do it card by card, like what we've done with Every Picture Tells a Story. And you can choose a card and have the client in the same way tell you what they see in that, what they think it means, how they think the person in that card feels. Like, for instance, if we look at the Queen of Pentacles right at the top, you know, it's quite neutral, I would say. You can see it in a positive way, you can see it in a negative way. So they can interpret it completely however they would want to, and what they would want to see in there, which will bring out their values and what is important to them as well, and how the valence of their thoughts are. Yeah, gee, that's true. Then you don't even have to do a lot of work. You could just tell them what to do and get it over with. So this is just an interesting way to bring another bit of perspective and something, a different bit of imagination and creativity into the sessions. A more modern design of tarot cards from the Wild Unknown, which is a relatively new deck, I think, and very, very popular. So in the same way, you can have, for instance, the person interpret what that tree and the moon makes them think of, and they may, yes, excellent point, Monique. So you can definitely help a client become unstuck when you use this. So if they stuck and they don't know why, maybe something will come out of this type of exercise. So a person can have a look at the tree and the moon, and they can insert themselves into that environment, into that picture, or not, or they can say if they think it's a nice and warm night, pleasant summer night, if it's a winter's night, very cold, if they feel lonely there, if they may be having a picnic. So you can see it in multiple different ways, including the birds. I mean, it's the lover's card, so that already implies something, but are they migrating? Where are they going to? You can tell basically a whole story about that. Yes, I agree with you, Monique. It's incredible how a story, nobody really has a resistance to telling a story and imagining certain things. They may, to their surprise, feel that if they start to imagining a certain situation, they may become quite emotional about it and then become a little bit closed. But another thing that I've got to say about this as well, and I mentioned that I think sort of 3 cards or so, and you have the client choose the first one, and you can choose one. If the story doesn't, after a little bit of a discussion, doesn't get too much, then just move on to the next card that maybe would speak to them more. Interesting point. So you can use the cards for the client to self-interpret. And that's interesting as well. And the guys of you who know Oracle cards know that it's used as a self-reflection tool. So you would draw often at random a card, and then you will take 15 minutes or half an hour to reflect on that card. And we'll get to some Oracle decks right after this as well. It is a good idea to let the client pick the first card, because that gives you clues as well. They will often choose something that they already have a preconceived idea that they feel comfortable with. So you're probably not going to be able to go so deep with the first card that the client picks, because they have a certain level of comfort with the card and the story behind it, and it's not so emotional. So that was an interesting observation that I made as well. You get an idea if it works for them, if they become emotional, if they have perspectives that you can see surprise them, and if they tell you that they're getting new awareness or new insights in the process. Basically, those 3 things. But emotions are normally the first clue that something is about to happen, and they are forming new insights, and that surprises them. Right, this is an energy deck, and you see that it's got topics already there. This is the first Oracle card deck that I chose. And you'll see these as rest and rejuvenation. The first one, envy, all tied up, adjacent possibilities, hostilities, and walking away. And you can either draw this random, or you can pick a card that is relevant to the topic or the struggles that the client face at the moment. So if they are stuck and they are not willing to or able to move out of their comfort zone, you can have a look at adjacent possibilities, for instance. Give them that card and have them tell a story and go through adjacent possibilities that they see in that card. So this is quite a good option as well to have. And then the final one, the Sacred Destiny deck. Flow, solitude, forgiveness, and embracing are just a selection of 4 cards in it. Also great ideas, Debbie, to use intuitive poems, guided meditation, all great ideas to use in conjunction maybe to this. So this is the same type of idea that you can either choose a card at random and ask them what they feel about it, what emotions do it bring up for them, about the feeling or the situation in each card, to tell a story behind it, basically. Yes, these are all basically great ideas that bring imagination into the fore. And as I said, the clients are not so resistant to it, and maybe they don't expect too much to come from it, and for them to be in too much of a discomfort. So they're more relaxed as well, which is a great situation to bring new information and new awareness out. So I've got a challenge for you guys. So I would like for any of you who would like to choose 1 or 2 of these techniques, go and do them, and then write about your experiences on the forum thread of this webinar. If you tried it with a client, write about that experience as well. If you have any questions, of course, ask it there, and then write on the forum what you think are the best ideas, and just maybe you can write an article about it for us in an upcoming edition of Jay's new Purpose Ed magazine. So I don't know how you think about that, but if you're up to the challenge, I am looking forward to hear about it. So the best way is to maybe write about it on the webinar forum. This webinar has got a thread in the forum, so write about it there, write your experiences there, and I'll follow it, and I'll answer every one of your questions, experiences, what you share, whatever. So it'll be lovely to hear from you and hear if you tried it and what you thought about it as well. So just to remember, stories are powerful reminders of our vision and values. Debbie, I know the magazine has got its own email address, which is probably the best way to send it to. Otherwise, if you email support@jayshettycoaching.com, they will refer it to the right place as well. But you're very welcome to write an article. Maybe just send us the main points and title that you've got an idea to write, because every issue has got a certain theme. So just send us, let's say, your proposed title and 4 bullet points or so, and we'll discuss it with you further. But you are very welcome to do that. So building your story, our story helps us be better coaches, and it helps us to align our vision, values and relations to other. We can help our clients find their story to strengthen their purpose, motivation, and confidence. Then all these techniques that I've showed you are ways to construct your story which reveals hidden thoughts and feelings, and we learn more about ourselves and our clients in the process. So again, your story should be alive with possibilities and become your daily blueprint. So work on it daily, visualize it, amend your writing, do self-reflections, and keep it alive that way. And remember, your story is never fixed and should be growing with you in the sense of having a growth mindset. So this is all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the session. I really enjoyed chatting to you guys about it, and I really enjoyed reading all your experiences and ideas in the chats. So thank you very much for that. And I certainly hope to read your thoughts and for you to share your ideas in the thread. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you very much. Yes, Kelly, you are correct. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Okay, guys, thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see and hear from you soon. Bye, everyone.